I was going to do one long video on the 572 XPG, XP, and the 565. The file size was just ridiculous. It would have been about 45 minutes, so I'm just going to do this kind of like an inside the 572 and 565, show some of the differences. 565 detuned version of the 572, lacking crank stuffers on the 565. Cylinders the same. Transfer caps, like they've done in the past, are altered. The 572 has a 25%-ish deeper tunnel. You can see this would be the 572 in my right hand, and this would be the 565 in my left. Be hard to pick up on camera, but the 572 is much deeper, quite a bit more transfer volume. Cylinders are, like I said, exactly the same. Port timing is exactly the same. Side transfers where the caps go, your typical Strato intake, bottom fed, quite large down here. Cylinder quality looks really amazing. It's a 565 one right here. I've already started to TIG weld the combustion chamber to fill it up to get the volume I want. I'll be doing some port work here shortly. Intakes are exactly the same. You can tell on these new saws, these new X-Torques, that they're taking a lot of time to manage the heat. There's a partition wall here. There's a lower partition wall right here to keep the heat from coming from the cylinder. And in both of the top covers, there's also some kind of a, it's not a foam material, but it's some kind of a very light, I don't know if it's plastic, but for keeping the heat out of the carb box area. This is the 572. You can see it has crank stuffers, minimize the volume of the crankcase. The pistons are exactly the same. It's typical stuff we've been seeing on the X-Torques from Husqvarna for a while on Red Max. Transfer, side transfer for the Strato. Both pins are very close to each other on the intake side. Fairly heavy piston. I should probably get a measurement on that. What I have noticed differences in between the two on the auto tune, and it's got to do with the port timing and the way it manages crankcase volume. The 565 feels a little lazier. The throttle response isn't quite as quick, and it does not rev as high as the 572. But going off the video that I did and timed them, they're identical. They're within a second of each other with a 24-inch bar buried for about 40 seconds. Their cut times are identical. I prefer a low top saw, and a lot of guys aren't going to be like that. Not because of the filter, and I'm not as big a fan of the filter on the low tops, but I like the low profile and the flickability of the 572. It might partially be mental, but I always liked the look and the I don't know, just the low profileness of the low top saws. The filter box is very similar, except of course the 572 does have a screw-on filter, which I see now they just came out with a revision, so the bottom plate is metal instead of plastic. I guess there were some people complaining about fines. I have not seen that on 572s. I've had really good luck with them. We cut mostly hardwood here, so I don't really have, and with good sharp chain, you don't really have that much issue with it. Carbs are almost identical. They do have a different spec number on them. I don't know if that, I'll have to dig deeper into that to see if it's just software. But the Venturas are the same. The throttle bodies are the same. You can see that and how it's typical auto-tune stuff. One linkage controls both butterflies for the Strato and the carburetor. Still has a microprocessor that controls one solenoid valve that changes the fuel ratio from idle to mid to high end. Throttle position sensor is right here. It has two magnets, so it knows, the computer knows when to transition from the low map to the high map, so the fuel ratio is correct. The mufflers are identical. There's no difference in between them. There is a divider right here that runs all the exhaust all the way down to the bottom. And then there's finger feeders that run up the front and come up top right here and then flow out. So, I mean, if you've done enough muffler mods, you know what you're probably going to do there. I don't generally mess with the timing much on the ignition on these saws because the factory is so aggressive with timing that usually you don't get anything out of it or even slow them down. Going back to another thought though, with the port timing or with the transfers and the crank stuffers, you can see your scavenge pattern on the 565, how you have a wash right here and then it hits the back wall and then you have a small line coming through where it scavenges out. On the 572, it seems to be a little bit more efficient. If you can see that, you've got a larger path on the sides, probably more volume, and then a larger tunnel through the center and a cleaner piston top running off the front. So the scavenging efficiency seems to be a little bit better on the 572. Just another one of the little differences in between them. I'm going to work these over a little bit. Like I said, I already started, did some combustion chamber filling with the TIG on a little bit of aluminum. I've started to reshape that. We'll see if we can get this 565 right up with a 572. It's going to be difficult since it has stuffers, but we'll see what we can end up with. And that'll be in a separate video.